Good to go. See the live.
We're
All
good
right,
to
we'll
go.
call the options subcommittee meeting to order. Start with the first agenda will be roll call. Andrew Martelli,
Here.
Renee Martinez, Sylvia Nichols,
She was there.
Yeah.
There she is.
Back.
she is here.
Okay.
So we have a quorum of the options subcommittee, correct?
Yep.
Very good. Next agenda item will be the Pledge of Allegiance. You want to put the flag up there or not? All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
That one's pretty smooth.
All right.
Yeah, Chuck, that was really good.
Thank you. I've been practicing since kindergarten, my friends.
You just nominate one person to do it, then we can.
I think that's the way it should be. One person should do it.
All right. So the main agenda item here is discussion of the matrix, with the goal of this meeting here to come out, incorporate comments from the full committee that we received on Wednesday, and produce a clear direction forward as far as how we will evaluate the scenarios and the use of this matrix going forward. So I think
John, you want to bring that matrix up, the latest one?
You want me to share? You want it? You got it, John. I got the
Whatever's
one you
good,
sent.
Chuck,
So.
you can do it. We'll follow along.
Good, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'll just share my screen real quick.
Go for it.
Okay.
All right, you guys are all looking at the matrix, yes?
Yes.
All right, so I believe this document, this current one up is Rev 4 that you had sent.
4? Okay.
Just confirm. Oh, I'm sorry, it's Rev 3. We'll look at the Rev 3 one to start. All right, so the main discussion, I think feedback from the other night revolved around physical conditions, needs, code requirements versus modernizing the instructional spaces. And the general sense of that is the way that we're combining the scenarios right now of capital improvements for other schools that aren't specifically listed versus renovate, combining them into a single line scenario. The thought was that on a renovate, these two categories would really be the same. If we're renovating like new, that is modernizing the space, whereas a capital improvement plan may be addressing the physical needs, but wouldn't necessarily modernize the space in the same way. Right. So that's the first discussion point, kind of get where we're at with that. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that there, Andrew or Sylvia.
Yeah, I mean, if I could, I just, sorry, Sylvia, I don't know if you wanted to go first.
No, go ahead. That's fine.
I understand what was brought up in the meeting about eliminating the modernizing or combining those two columns. I feel pretty strongly that they should stay as two distinct separate columns. One, because the CIP versus the renovation is going to be very different from a price standpoint for when Jim put together the prices. And I think that we can't just, I don't know if the idea is to put CIP and or renovate as one item, but I think that that's going to be probably, if you look at all of the projects, of about a $50 million difference. Yep. Maybe I'm right.
Taking a step back on it though, if we were to leave it as two options, as far as CIP, do you see that as a viable option for addressing the school needs? Like, should we consider CIP as a whole, or should we only be looking at renovate options? What are your thoughts there?
I mean, if I had endless amounts of money, I would say renovate, but I guess I'd have to see what the difference in overall project costs are going to be between CIPs and doing renovations. I mean, if you take CIP off the table for the high school, the middle school, and the elementary schools and just put renovations, it's going to be a very different costed project. So,
got it. And real quick, Sylvia, before I go there, Chuck, I think the issue we ran into with that though is that we don't have what the CIP would be. Like, we don't have an idea of what projects actually need to be completed or cost of them to include like we had just guessed, right? We had like a 15 to 25
Ranges.
million high low,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, just as an example, to kind of get a order of magnitude, the delta that Andrew's talking about, and I just brought up scenario 2A for a new middle school between the CIP for Doolittle, Highland, Norton, and then renovating those. And so the low total project budget for CIP is 337 million estimated versus 412 to renovate the other schools. So you're about 75,000 delta to
Million.
renovate the three on the low side.
75 million, yes.
75 million.
Yep, sorry, 75 million. And then on the high side of the budget, that range was 432 to 509.
Got it.
So it's roughly 70 to 75 million range, and that's just that one. But it's probably going to be similar for all because that's the delta between, you know, the CIP and doing new. We use the same numbers in each of the scenarios. So, you know,
So
say
just-
roughly $75 million plus or minus.
To follow up, Andrew, and then I'll give Sylvia, I'll give you the
That's
same.
right, I'm just.
same option there
thinking
is.
ahead.
Given that price difference, you'd be in favor of keeping the two columns that we have, understanding that there's a difference between CIP and renovate, but that would also lead to expanding the scenario list from the 5 that we have right now to include the different options that have CIP along the way versus renovate along the way so that we can rank them accordingly. Is that right?
That's kind of where
I got you.
I think I would hate to take CIP off the table entirely because, you know, I know we're not getting into the nuts and bolts of it, but I mean, Highland School, for instance, could benefit from some CIP. You know, if we spent $20 million at Highland School, I don't think we would need to spend another dollar there. I'd hate to lose this whole project over something like that.
Understood.
So, and by eliminating one of those columns, I think that we need more than just having. Essentially, if we eliminated the modernizing column or one of those two or combined them, then we're only really looking at 3 criteria to rate all of the scenarios because the financial impact one is going to come from the town.
Yeah, I agree.
And I like options, but that's just me.
Yeah.
I don't mean to make this more confusing, and I hope that I'm not doing that. And, you know, I'm ready to get this thing done, believe me, as I'm sure as everybody else is. I'm sorry to take up on a Friday afternoon.
But
We want to get it done, but we want to make it right, right? So,
Right, yes, because this is going to be, you know, like last night at the Board of Ed when we were talking about it, you know, this is basically going to be what we're going to compare all the options with. And so we want to get it right because, you know, there's going to be a lot of people using this. And, you know, even if they're not part of the overall scoring that's going to be rated as part of the SMC, people are still probably look at this and see how we evaluated everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Go
your
ahead, Chuck.
district,
You wanna say
your
something?
district share is much closer. So looking at those same scenarios and looking at on the low end, the district share for, and again, this is estimated just for those who are watching this on video. You know, in the CIP plan, we estimate the district share in the low end to be 226 million, assuming, you know, you get the reimbursements and stuff. And on the low end for the renovation option is 251 million. So you're only talking a difference of like anywhere, and on the high side, it's even tighter. It's basically 12 to 25 million dollar difference between those on the district share side of things.
Yeah. So just
you know,
to
so that tightens
just
it
to
up.
clarify that from what we had before. So we were just mentioning that the net difference between a CIP option versus a renovate option, we had said on the low end, it was 337 on the CIP option versus 412 on the renovate option for a 75 million net difference. That
20,
was,
and that's total project budget.
that's
yeah.
total project budget. But now you're saying on the, if we're looking at district share, so what the town would be responsible for paying, making assumptions on the reimbursement rate, it'd be
Yeah.
226 million on the CIP options versus 251 million on the renovate options. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
Got it.
So that reimbursement makes a difference.
I have a
Yeah.
question.
Go ahead,
though.
Sylvia.
Yeah, we're looking at all these categories across the top, but if I'm looking at my option, my first scenario,
Mhm.
it's I'm trying to weigh both of those, CIP and renovate, in that same number. Why are we not making that be one being renovate and two being with the CIP option? Because it seems to me in the end, what we will likely end up doing is coming up with a basic plan of whether it's the new middle school or the new elementary school or the new high school. As we address the individual schools down the road, we may have to adapt those scenarios depending on the budgetary impact, depending on the climate, depending on the enrollment, if it changes. So wouldn't then that be where we would decide whether it was to be renovated or done as a capital project?
Yeah, so I think that's the main question that we got
Right.
the other night, and kind of what Andrew was saying is that they should be separate options.
Separate.
I think we were
Because-
attempting to simplify it, but it kind of muddied up the two factors there.
I
But,
think so. And it's like I said to John in my note, I said, if I'm buying a car, I go in, I want you to give me the whole thing. Give me the biggest cost for my big Bentley or whatever it is I want to have. And then let me say, okay, I need the tires and I need the steering wheel and I need the engine, but I don't need the radio and the sunroof, So the basic plan is to get my car to get me to work safely. The basic plan here is to have safe schools with good physical conditions, with good space for the kids, with some ability to modernize and look forward to the programs. And so that to me is the first thing we should be looking at. And then when we see that it's either way too expensive, we might then tweak that into different schools. So one school gets CIP, another one gets renovated, and possibly a third one gets built new. But doesn't that depend? It's like South Windsor changed as they went through their process to meet the needs as they went along, but they had a basic plan to accomplish. And I think we're allowing the basic plan to get muddled by all of the options, because as we go forward, those options will change and they will need to be adapted, in my opinion. And maybe I'm totally wrong. That's the way I see it.
yeah, and I'd kind of seen it the same way, and that's why I was saying, like, if we're really just focused on what happens to the school, whether it's CIP or renovate, like that's why I had thought to combine them initially, but I can
Yeah.
see how, like, evaluating the scenarios, it doesn't,
It's hard to do.
it's
And
a little
then
harder
the other
because of the
part is
categories, the factors.
the people see the big cost and they see that we're working to do that. And then after the first project, they see the value, as Kate Carter said. They go to the schools, they see what's happened, you've engaged them in the process, and they say, oh my gosh, this is really good. So maybe we want to rethink the CIP part of it, and maybe we do want to change and renovate as new, depending on the reimbursements. But I'm not sure that's where we need to start. I think we need to get a plan in general that tackles the three major concerns: space, learning, modern learning, and your structure, infrastructure. And if that plan meets all those criteria, then the rest of it can be tweaked to fit those other needs, in my opinion.
I think if you recall, at one point, one of the prior meetings, we had discussed trying to, narrow down the options and the scenarios, because we didn't want to, overload them. Because
Yeah.
at the point, we have 13 different scenarios.
Right.
And we were just a little bit leery of having 13, rows of things to have to grade and weight. And that was part of that reasoning to combine the CIP and the renovate. But ultimately, it may make more sense to ideally, separate those all out to, properly grade each of those scenarios.
And can we get it down to fewer scenarios? Can we agree that there are some scenarios that meet those needs, but are going
I'd like to say yes, but you have so many
I don't know
committee
that we
members
can.
that have different opinions.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it depends on if I could, I think it depends on the criteria you're going to use, because frankly speaking, when we're talking with all the scenarios, CIP versus renovate, they all have that same option. So that's a discussion I think we need to put in its own bucket of, do we renovate or we do CIP? The real crux here, frankly, it's your enrollment. It's
Yes.
what you're going to renovate the high school or doing new, and all the different options. It's what order do they go in? However, and be honest with you, if we go to the state, and my experience with them is, we go to them and say, we're proposing to do a new renovate the high school first, and they see the enrollment problem in your space needs they have, I think they're going to question and go, why are you proposing to do that first, when in 3 or 4 years you guys are going to have a space crunch here?
Right.
And as the grant authority who you're seeking reimbursement from, I think they're going to ask that question and go, why are you putting that first instead of addressing the absolute, data-driven needs of what you have? And I'm just throwing that out there because I think that's what they will ask from their side. And I think that's really the first step is doing the high school and renovating, or a new high school in 3 and 4, more important than addressing your elementary school needs. I think that's your first fundamental question.
Absolutely.
And that'll break it really down to where you go from there. Now, then you can talk step 2. Okay. If it is the renovate high school or new, you can discuss which one's better. And then second step is, you still have the problem of not having enough space in
Right.
options 3 and 4. You're still going to have a problem at the elementary school level. Now, is it a new middle school or a new elementary school or some other option? I don't know what else is, those are the ones we're looking at. You're still going to have that problem at the end of the day.
Here's
Regardless.
my basic
So
question.
Chuck, are you suggesting though, should we, I'm sorry, Sylvia, are you
Okay.
suggesting then that we should only be looking at the options, like based on what the state grants office give us here?
Well,
We should only be
not-
looking at
not-
options that address the enrollment early, or no?
Well, I think from our experience with the state, if they look at these, and that's why we want to meet with them and get their input on it. They, all our ingredients are similar, right? We're taking either the high school is going at the end or it's going at the beginning. It's still in all the options to address the high school. So it's, and addressing the elementary schools is in all the options, and whether we do new middle school or a new elementary school. Again, it's what order do these go in? We're going to address them at some point based upon the options we have. And I just want to shed some light on the fact that if I think the state of Connecticut's going to look at it, because the number one thing they look at is enrollment. They're gonna want to go, what's your enrollment doing? That's what they ask every single time. And once we show them that data, they're gonna go, you're on space wise, you're good at your high school. We understand your conditions are what they are, and the same thing at that. However, there's another factor that's telling us that that's where your need is at. And as the state of Connecticut, they'll tell you, we're going to help you with your need first. We'll help you with that. And the high school, that option doesn't address your spacing. It's going to exacerbate it, if anything else. And the question is does the SMC in the town of Cheshire believe in the data? Because if it does, then that data is telling you the direction you should probably proceed first. I think we just I'm just putting it out there because I don't think anybody wants to address it. I'm just throwing it out there in this meeting that it's screaming at us what you need to do.
So
We
go ahead,
pay,
Sylvia.
yeah, we've hired Colliers to be our advisor. The 13 people on this committee have never done this project before. We don't have any experience with dealing with the state. We haven't got the expertise, and we've hired Colliers to advise us and help us to figure out the best plan. And in doing that, they've provided us with factual information. Now, can that be tweaked slightly and the prices be tweaked a little bit as we proceed? Of course. But in my opinion, it is Collier's experience that we're paying for. And Collier's is guiding us in the direction that is going to be to the best advantage of the town financially and educationally. And everything I hear for every meeting, time after time after time after time, is that the first thing we need to do is address the enrollment issues. And it has been proven by other projects they've been involved in that even during the projects, those enrollment issues change. And if we look logically at Cheshire, the enrollment that is most likely to grow will be in the younger age kids, because once families are in high school, unless you have to move, you stay and keep your kids in high school for the most part. So the majority, and that's proven time after time, year after year. But my kids are here and they're staying here because they've got 2 more years, or now we've got 1 more year at Cheshire High School. And they could have moved 2 years ago, but they stayed because they wanted to keep the kids in the same school system. So I think we've heard this time and time again. So in my opinion, I'm getting frustrated with our inability to pick a plan. And in my opinion, we have 2 reasonable choices. I have one opinion, of the best one in my opinion, and I will score it and see if it comes out that way. And one is to address a new elementary school, and the other is to address the middle school first. But in my opinion, those 2 are the viable options that we should be spending the time on fine tuning. And I feel that's what Colliers is helping us to determine. And that's what we're paying them to do. If we're paying them to do a job, we need to listen to them and listen to their guidance and their advice. If we can't do that, then we can't put a plan together. And that's my frustration right now. We're getting nowhere. I mean, we're doing a lot of work, but we've got to draw a line in the sand and start doing something. Otherwise, this project will never happen. So
I agree. And Andrew, you're muted there. You want to weigh in?
Sorry, can I just throw in maybe like following up on what, and not to muddy the waters and make this even more complicated than it already is, but following up on what Sylvia said, what happens if we take the scenarios column and, like Sylvia said, following Colliers is saying X, Malone and McBroom is saying Y. Our immediate problem here with our schools is going to be enrollment issues at the elementary school. What happens if we dictate what the phasing is and say, instead of it saying scenarios, it says phase 1, and phase 1 is new pre-K through 6 elementary school, renovate, expanded Dodd for 68 middle school, or a new middle school for 68 to address the enrollment issue. And that's phase 1. I mean, maybe the options could be different, but just saying phase 1 is going to be addressing the issue within our elementary school levels over the next 8 years. We're going to be out of room. That's immediate. And then phase 2, however that falls into place, it could be building a new $100 million Cheshire High School or renovating the existing high school. And then the elementary schools that are left, doing CIPs to all the elementary schools, and the price will be this, or renovating all the elementary schools, gut renovations of the elementary schools is going to be this. And tell them what the phases are.
I think that was the intent of the like the order. It is meant to be chronological. So scenario 1 is new K through 6, renovate the elementary and Dodd, renovate high school. Whereas 3A is the same exact scenario. It's just a different order. It's starting
Right.
with renovate the high school. I think what I'm hearing out of Sylvia, and I mean, this is, I think she hit the nail on the head with what Chuck's saying is we can't start with renovating the high school because it doesn't address the enrollment projection. And that seems like a non-starter for the state.
And that's why I want to have the meeting,
rolling.
Chuck. So you guys hear it from the state, because that's only from our experience, and we appreciate that you trust our experience, but you know, they're the ones who are going to be making that decision, right? And that's why we want to have the meeting to go, what do you guys think? So then when and they may say something, they may say, you know, hey, yeah, go ahead and start with the renovation of high school. I just don't see that coming out of them based upon what we've, you know, all the projects we've had. Michelle Dixon, who you know, she's gonna go, what's your enrollment doing? That's her first question out of her mouth. And
yeah,
here's where you got, and we're going to be stressed. And the reason we're looking at the high school is frankly because people have proposed it, and we need to consider all the recommendations, right? You know, and they're all important, but that is a starting point. I just really don't see the state being on board with that. And here's the thing is if they don't get on board with the program, then your column for financial impact gets totally obliterated, because you're not going to get the dollars from the state that you're going to want.
So I mean, if we're going back though and looking at the intent of this matrix when we first started talking about it was to eliminate or kind of find some scenarios to focus on. But I mean, it sounds like we know these scenarios to focus on, and we want to weigh those versus one another a little bit more rather than look at all 12 or 13 scenarios, I think is what you were talking about, John. Does that seem fair, Andrew, Sylvia?
Yeah.
I
Can
like
we,
Andrew's idea, by the way. I think that's,
right,
another way to look at it and go, this has to be the first phase to addressing this. And I think that's another good way of
right, I agree.
Because,
looking at
yeah,
this.
and then it lays out what the plan is gonna be for the next 10 to 15 years.
Yep.
And then you could break out CIPs versus renovations to the elementary schools and put price tags to those as just those options, because I think it gets kind of lost with the new 68 middle school with CIV/renovations.
Mhm.
Um,
The slash is confusing,
like
and that's where
parts of
there's
Yeah.
each of the
technology.
plans. But,
Do we want to look at just the first, it's the first 3 listed scenarios here, break them down by phase 1, 2, or 3, but then also expand them so they have a CIP line and a renovate line as 2 separate scenarios, right? So that we can get grading on all of them, or am I not understanding that right? So for example, this one would be everything you see here except the CIP would be gone. It would just say phase 2 would be renovate other elementary schools and Dodd. Phase 3 would be renovate high school. Then the next line item would be everything you see here, except it would be renovate other elementary schools in Dodd, renovate high school, and there wouldn't be the CIP option in that second one.
Well,
Is that how you
that's what we
guys
had
see that?
originally. That's what
Yep.
we did have, Chuck, was
Yeah.
what you're
Right.
describing is, what John's describing is, it was all those different, I think I'm trying to bring up the original one, John, that had all of those.
I think it's
And
Rev
just-
1, Chuck.
Yeah, okay, yeah, if I could show you, Chuck.
Yeah.
So our very first matrix, okay, was this,
Mhm.
where you had new elementary school, CIP, and then renovate. It was
Yeah.
exactly, it looks different because we've modified, and I like our new format, but essentially we're having, all these different, options we had. But I think where we got to is like, it's too many to evaluate, and talking, getting input from Mike and Rebecca, and I think it was great, is like, we need to simplify this and really look big picture,
Mhm.
At it. So that's why he's got condensed down to the 5. But as we go,
Yeah, but I think what we're saying is we want to condense it even further. Am
What
I not
happens
hearing
if
that
you-
correctly?
What happens if you selected 3 possible scenarios, 3 assumptions? Either build an elementary school, build a 6 through 8 Dodd, or build or renovate a new high school. I mean, that's 3 buildings, and each one of those accommodates some portion of it addresses the enrollment things in different orders. And then the second and third phases of those go high school and then renovate Dodd, and then whatever the second and third phases were in there. But instead of saying let's have a 7 to 8 middle school, let's have a grade 4 and 5. Can we just say we need elementary schools, a 6 through 8 Dodd middle school, and a high school? Those are the 3 most viable options, in my opinion, for the town. How do we get there? Is it by building them new? Is it by renovating? But then you expand each one of those things in 2 different scenarios, one's with CIP and one with renovation budgets.
Yeah, I think that would be going back to the matrix that the initial
so
matrix
the
we just
first
looked at from
3
Chuck. Just add the details that we currently have on the
Yeah, just
lines in the
3
phase 1
basic
through 3.
steps of education, 6 through 8 elementary, high school, and then build those things from those and eliminate all the other possible scenarios. And then if you end up with 6, you've got one with CIP and one with renovation. I'd like to see what the budget is for renovation to begin with and not worry about the CIP at the first stage. And then when we got those numbers, we would say, ye gods, we can't do that. Now give us the numbers for CIP or some combination of CIP and renovation. Because you don't have to have everything CIP. Some of it could be renovated, some could be CIP. I don't know, maybe I'm complicating it even more.
No, I think we have all the ingredients, and I think we've priced up probably 90% of the different type of options, whether it's CIP. The CIP, we're making some assumptions here with the caveat. And so I think what you're saying, like you said, hey, the problem is you have an elementary school enrollment space problem.
Yeah.
You don't have it at your high school. And again, as your consultant, I'm going to ask the town of Cheshire, what is the price, unless you do them both at the same time. Let's just say, hey, we're going to renovate the high school and potentially a new middle school, which that price tag goes up. And hey, maybe that's the solution, to them both. I don't know. But from a technical point and from again, my experience with OSCGR, they're probably going to ask, why are you not addressing this problem that you have? Because eventually
You're going to stop at the post.
portables or something, they don't want to do portables. That's a waste of money. That's truly a waste of money, according to the state. And all this comes, I think for me, it still comes back to, you got a space problem in your elementary school that has to be fixed. Assuming you believe the data. If you don't believe the data and you want to throw it out, then we can go whatever way you want. But if you believe the data, you're going to run out of room. You're going to run out of room. And what's your answer at that point? Ben's going to be scrambling to get portables on site somewhere, paying crazy amounts of money for it. That's going to be the solution on that.
If we revise this though, and we look at it like I've kind of laid out in the first 4 here, right? Sylvia, I agree. Narrowing it down to those options, I wouldn't hone in just on a 6 or 8 middle school and address that just as a middle school. So we're talking elementary schools, middle school, high school. Because I think K through 6 elementary school is still a viable option that addresses the enrollment like we're talking about. But if we lay these out like we kind of do here, option 1, like I said, new K through 6, renovate other elementary schools, renovate high school. And the second option, forget about the numbers for a second, would be the same except CIP. And then we're weighing those and kind of grading those out. And, I think we're all in agreement here that the high schools, as far as a first option, may not be a scenario to grade out based on the information that we're receiving from Colliers and how we're interpreting that data. Is that correct?
Sounds correct in my
Yes.
opinion. Andrew, do you follow that?
Yeah, I follow that.
Yep.
Absolutely. I mean, we hired consultants to help guide this process, and the immediate need is the enrollment at the elementary school level. And so I feel fully confident, as the SMC, we're making decisions on behalf of our community, and that is our major issue right now. And so to not move forward with a project based on hard data, and it might be nice and cheaper to do a brand new Cheshire High School as the first project, but then where is that going to leave the district from an educational standpoint 3 years from now? And that's where we know that information now. I'd hate to be sitting here and picking up the newspaper in 4 or 5 years and there's not room for our students to go to the elementary schools. I mean, we would have failed this whole process.
I agree.
Understood. Jen, did you want to say something? I saw you on mute.
I did. So we talked about this a few meetings back, I think even in mid-November. We mentioned this in the full meeting. And we had a couple people in the meeting say that they weren't ready to take the high school off the table yet. And that's one of the reasons why we developed this matrix, was to show mathematically what the best option is. So knowing that this subcommittee can't take any options off the table, we can certainly decide that we want to not score some of them, but we don't have the ability to take them off the table completely. I think we need to go back to the full committee and make sure everyone is on the same page as far as starting with either an elementary school or a middle school that relieves the pressure in the elementary schools, and make sure that we can do that. And I agree completely. I think it's logical. I think I've been thinking that since the beginning, but there are other people on the committee that don't agree with that. So I don't know that we have the number of votes that we would need to remove this from the list. So I'm concerned that we are here sitting here talking about how we're going to remove an option, but I'm not really sure that's something we can even do. And maybe it's a question for Arnett. Can we, through email, take a vote? And from the whole committee, is that something that can be done, or does it have to be in person?
It has to
Well,
be, it has to be in a meeting.
Okay.
Let me
So-
just backtrack there. Do we need to take a vote? If we're eliminating an option, if the direction of the committee, right, and the leadership of the committee and the options subcommittee that we appointed to review the options and discuss the scenarios with the owner's rep, can we say that we see it that we don't necessarily want to proceed with a scenario and focus the group? Is that something that we can do without a vote?
The options committee can make recommendations, and that one of those recommendations could be that an option is removed from the mix.
But we had said all along that the options committee cannot add or remove options. That
No,
has
it'd
to be
just be,
the full
yeah,
committee.
it would just be a recommendation.
The
Yeah.
recommendation, right?
And I don't think, well, I'm not suggesting removing the option. I'm just saying that that's not gonna, I don't think that's the best first. That's why I was saying. doing
Right, I
phases.
agree.
Yeah.
So if
it
you're
should-
doing phases, if the project's gonna be phased over the next X amount of years, Cheshire High School could be rebuilt or renovated or however, or CIP'd, but it's not gonna be, I don't think, it's not prudent to do that project first.
It's semantics, because right now our options are based around timelines and phases. So we have options that are pretty much the same thing all the way down the line. It's just a matter of what goes first. So
Exactly.
while you're saying, you know, we're talking about phasing and all that, that is what we've defined as options. Option 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe even 5 now, whatever. But I think we have two options here. I don't like that word anymore, but anyway, we have two ways that we can go. We can recommend that we don't score the high school and then go back to the full committee in January and say that's what we recommended. It's going to waste a couple of weeks. We could also score all 13 of the options that we have. I know that's a lot of work, but that will provide the foundation that we need to be able to defend any decision we make. And not only, I've said this a few times, not only do we have to make the best decision, we have to prove that we evaluated all the other decisions and convince the rest of the town that is also the best decision. So we need that proof. We need to show that we've done our due diligence, we've evaluated all the options, and the answer that we've come to is the best answer for the town. And we need that proof behind it to back us up. If the group of us right here, the four of us from the committee decide right now that we know logically it doesn't make sense to start with a high school, we can make the decision, we can recommend it to the full committee, but now all we have is our thoughts. We don't have the statistical background to back up why it's not the right decision.
Well,
So I'm concerned.
I don't agree with that. I think
I
we do
don't
have
agree
the
with that. I think
statistical
we do have
background.
that. Yeah.
I agree that the data is showing us that we have to start with a lower grade level. Absolutely. But we also have to convince the town of that. And I'm concerned that even with the data that we've displayed in all of our meetings, the people in the town still don't understand that this is our priority, that we have to address the enrollment issues. So how do we get that point across? How do we make sure that all the people out there that support a high school to be done first understand why we didn't do that and understand that we have to do something else? How do we get them to vote for this in November?
I think you go January, you take your first options scoring thing that we're doing now, the matrix. And then when you go, Chuck, in January to the state, you have some more information, which will perhaps substantiate, perhaps not, but the state's willingness to do reimbursements for things in the order that we went, that might substantiate our position either, or strengthen our position, I guess, is what I want to say, that the high school should not be the first issue, because the state will not grant us the funds we need in the amounts we need. I mean, that's another piece. And I think that as a council person, it's really important to get community feedback. And we've been so transparent in this so far that it's been very good. And the people that I've spoken to are very happy to see what we're doing. But there comes a point in time when you're never going to please everybody. And there will always be a faction that is going to say, well, they should have done. I mean, I've been on that council 10 years, and no matter what we do and how hard we've researched things, there's always that faction. So you're right, Jen, we need to get people on board, and we need to keep being transparent, but we need to keep emphasizing that the charge here shows that we need to, the best interest of the entire school system is to make sure that there's room for our how many thousand elementary school students in the short term. And
Yeah, I think the main thing with any option that would lead with a high school is, how does that address the enrollment projection? And there's no good answer for that. The answers so far have been, well, it'll correct itself over time, but that's not reality. There's the time that you get to those elementary schools where it doesn't correct itself, and you're actually lowering the quality of education by having, these portable units, et cetera. So, I mean, I think we have the data that tells us. Yeah, if the data tells us that the enrollment is a driving factor for where we need space, and then we're also getting the driving factor for how we get the best reimbursement from the state, is on the same line, the enrollment. I mean, there's our facts. That's what you need. And then when we meet with the state and they tell us the same thing, there's more support there. It's just a matter of, I mean.
Yeah, Chuck, I just want to be really clear. It's just our experience, because some people may take I don't want anybody to take my comments out of context. It's purely just our experience. And Casa Diamantis and Michelle Dixon, Bob Summer, those people in that office, they'll make their own, statements on it, and whatever they say go. They may say, hey, they're fine with the high school. So I just want to be real clear. We haven't had discussions with them or anything like that. I don't want to miss.
Understood.
Yep.
So, I mean, that opens up possibility. Maybe we're wrong, but we're going to be meeting with them in the next few weeks, first couple weeks of January, and we'll leave open that possibility that if we were wrong, I mean, you could put it on the table.
right.
And Jen, I think to your point, it's almost a 3-step process. I think the first step is filling out the matrix, whether it be, 5 scenarios or all 13. The second step is meeting with the state. And then ultimately the third step is going to be presenting that to the community, at which point steps 1 and 2 have been completed, so that you can, sort of use that as the basis and or, argument, if you will, for saying or presenting why, scenario X, Y, or Q was selected versus, A, B, and C. So, I think you've got to take it in that sequence.
Call you back. I'm in a Zoom
to eventually, get to the community. But I think it's a little premature to try to, present this to the community overall when we don't have, these first couple of steps, addressed yet.
Right. But the fact is that we are presenting this every time we have a meeting to the community. So everyone sees what we're doing, because we are trying to be as transparent as possible. But when Dr. Carter spoke the other night, she had mentioned how having multiple scenarios splinters the community. So if you have one option, you have people either for it or against it. If you have 10 options, you have people either for option 1 or option 2 or option 3, and you can't get everyone to get behind the one option you actually end up going with, unless we have a way to convince them that option 5 really was their favorite, but now we're going to go with option 4. So now we have to not only convince all those people that were in no's that they now should be in favor of option 4, but all the people that were that were favoring option 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, whatever, they all now have to convert to this option 4 that we would really need to proceed with. So I'm just concerned, we either need to rank all of these options and score all of these options so that we have that background, the foundation, the proof, or we need to meet as a committee and talk about which ones we need to eliminate, and everyone needs to agree on it and be able to back that up too. And yes, going to the state is going to help and give us that information as well.
So how do we want to proceed, Sylvia, Andrew? I mean, this is your guys'
No, I mean, after
committee here.
after hearing Jen and John, I think that having all of the backup and statistical data, if we go forward with the matrix as it is with the options and we rate it, then we go to the state, talk it through with them. Like, let's just say that the new high school project comes out on top, right? Then we go to the state and we meet with the state, and the state says, hey, look, if you guys go forward and renovate Cheshire High School, don't come to us for funding, or, whatever they decide is going to be. You guys have an enrollment issue. Then we can go back to the community and say, hey, look, this is where the matrix shook out. Everyone is saying that they want a new high school. The state is saying, if you guys go forward with the new high school, we're going to have funding issues because your real issues in the elementary school level. Your Mylona McBroom study is saying this. Collier's is recommending this. And then we can say, okay, this is why we're not going forward with that option. And then I'd be okay with that.
That makes sense.
Right. Like, if we're not, Jennifer's right. Like, if we just kind of dismiss options and we go back to the committee and say, hey, look, at Cheshire High School is not going to be done for 15 years. Then we fracture the committee, and then we don't have the statistical data to back it up other than the Mylona McBroom study, which some people don't believe, like they just don't believe.
And that was one of my, sorry to interrupt, that was one of my things too, is that we have weighted the enrollment issue as our highest priority. But after the meeting the other night, I don't know if everyone agrees with that. Everyone was commenting on those different weightings. So if we can't agree that addressing the enrollment issue is our number one priority, then that's an issue too. We need to all make sure that everyone is on board with the fact that that is our priority, that we have to fix the enrollment as a priority.
Mm-hmm.
Do we change that? Should that be titled space needs versus enrollment to make it clearer? Because that's what it ends up really relating to is, space needs at the elementary level.
I don't know if it really makes a difference either way. I think it's clear what the issue is we don't have enough room for the kids.
I was just throwing it out there to.
Yeah.
It's called the outer room study, right? Space.
I like that.
The trailer.
So then we would proceed with what we have, but just separate each option into a CIP and a renovate. So we would be scoring each option in those two categories. Am I correct now?
I think that's the only thing that allows you to use that matrix reliably and clearly, is because if you try to put everything together, you don't really know what you're rating, and
Right.
it's
I agree
not
with
really valuable.
Right. And that was my initial issue with that.
That was my, concern.
Well, really
$75
just for the
million.
second and third factor. It allows you
it's
to.
like,
do that.
as Chuck said, that's a $75 million delta.
Right.
How do you
Total cost.
score that? Yeah.
Total cost.
And I do agree that the columns that we're talking about shouldn't be combined either. I think fixing
Well, I
things
think if we
versus
keep them this way,
modernizing
they won't.
things. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those two are kind of related, as if we were going to separate the CIP versus just go with the renovate. But now, I mean, the way I just kind of combined all these, and Chuck, John will send this. You guys can
We
wean on
can't
the
see,
phases
we
or
can't
whatever,
see your
but-
screen, Chuck.
Can't see.
Oh,
Yeah.
here I am playing with this thing the whole time. Here, hang on a second.
I was like, John and Chuck, are you guys thoroughly confused?
A little bit.
Got it, no problem.
I just figured he's
My
playing
bad.
Candy Crush on the side there, and
Cheshire, why did we respond to the RFP?
Yeah, that's my fault. I just fixed all these up. But I thought you guys were following along.
Beautiful, we're good.
Oh, nice.
nice. All right.
So yeah, so in general, I mean, I just combined it. Like, forget about the numbers that we had before, right? This is really the same things. It's just one line has renovate other elementary schools in Dodd versus one has CIP other elementary schools in Dodd. grade those out. Is that what we're saying? Yes.
Does this match up to what our initial options 1 through 13 were? I mean, do we go back to that, or is this the same thing?
Yeah. So I mean, this
I can
more or
double
less
check that, Jen. I can just verify that that matches up, because my thinking is that, you know, we would be sending that backup information reflective of the cost for each of these phases as well. So, you know, I think you want to make sure that information all correlates.
Yeah, that's why I was just saying. Well, you know, John,
But
Chuck,
yeah,
obviously,
we'll double
make
check.
sure that
Sure.
the phases are what's in there. But this is a copy paste of what we had before.
Okay.
Okay.
It's just
So, yeah.
I inserted a new line with separating out renovate versus CIP.
As long as we have, you know, like we talked about in the meeting and you just mentioned, as long as we have that description of what those words actually represent and the costs associated with them that we can send along with the matrix, I think that would be key.
And John did put together a spreadsheet with that summary, by the way.
So we'd have a sheet that looks something like this with for each scenario that we kind of lay out here. Hang on a second.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
and
on-
I know it's a lot of work to rate all of the options, but for somebody who believes firmly that a new middle school should be the first phase of it, they're going to discount all of the ones that have Cheshire High School as the first and just fill that all in with zeros or very low marks right off the bat.
Right. So
I
yes,
say it's obvious, but I'm just, you know, kind of trying to make it a little bit easier.
yeah. So we have this type of a spreadsheet that's on the screen now for each of these, 13 scenarios. So my assumption was that would be included with the email out to everybody on the committee that would be, you know, filling in the grading sheet. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
And-
just
and-
make sure that the scenario numbers match up to what was listed on there, because I think we
Right.
had like 2A, 2B was totally different, where now you really have 2A, 2B is the same thing minus CIP versus renovate. So
Right. So yeah, I'll go through and, you know, clean that up and make sure that all correlates with these sheets that are, you know, depicted here on the screen.
Yeah, and I want to address Andrew's point about it being a lot of work. I really think we're all in this already so deeply that it's not a whole lot to ask of people to rank 13 options rather than 5 options. And I think it's what we all need to do. I think we have to really do this the right way in order to be able to be successful in November.
And then no one feels like their option got left out. You know?
Right, right,
Yes, no one in this
Mhm.
committee and no one in the town too.
right, right.
Right.
okay, so I think it addresses thoroughly what we're talking about, scenarios for CIP versus renovation, right?
Yep.
The other option, other thing
Hold
that
on,
was
I'm
brought up.
sorry. Are we combining those columns? Because I see that they're combined. So physical.
Yeah, it's
needs.
I'm sorry. This is just based on the sheet I grabbed from John. I'm going to copy this into the other.
Okay.
So
So we're keeping them separate.
correct. Yeah. Let me.
Thank you. Okay.
I'll do that real quick so it's clear.
Try to pull a fast one, Chuck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's okay,
That's
Andrew.
me.
I noticed you had left out that column.
Ah, you saw it,
I'm not-
John. Okay.
Yes, I
We have to
did.
keep our eye on him.
Good though. And are we good with the weights of the columns? I mean, I'm fine.
Yeah, that's where I was headed next.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, it's
didn't-
all right.
You know,
All
know
right,
that-
Jen.
that was brought up in the meeting. I'm fine with that. I don't know, Sylvia. 'Cause I know
I'm
we
fine with that.
spent
I
time
didn't
on
have
it.
any issue with it at the beginning, so.
Well, the weights that are listed on the screen are not the right ones because there's only 4 options.
I
So,
grabbed the same. Hang on.
yeah,
The Rev 3 versus Rev 4 sheet's what's killing me here. Hang on a second.
maybe we need to make them different colors or something.
Yeah. I know the pressure of Chuck was feeling the other day with the.
Take your
Everyone
time.
watching.
If you want to take your time on Chuck and do it, take your time, man, because this is,
Yeah, I'll get it.
Make my life a little bit easier, so I appreciate it.
Here to help, John.
That looks better. So 30, 25, 25, and 20. And then it's up
Oh,
to
and somebody knows how to use Excel. It's amazing how many people.
All right. So, yes, so the comment was related to the weights is the second part. And I think a lot of that centered around whether, factor 2 and 3 were the same thing, which we've already addressed. So, I mean, unless there is any other feedback that maybe I'm missing out of there, I think we were pretty happy with the weights before, and nothing changed my opinion on them the other night. And
I mean,
we're
if they're
gonna keep it
equal,
the
you
way
can
we are.
always make them 22 and a half a piece, if people think they're equal. I mean, that's not a hard thing to do.
Well, I think in the case of a renovation, they were saying, well, it's really the same thing. So if that's the case, then the score should be the same, and it would be the same as if you combined them and gave them a 45 weight, right? How do you guys
I
feel
don't
about the
think-
weights, Sylvia? And-
I'm okay with them. I really don't.
I'm okay with them too, because, I think that the enrollment should be weighed heavier than physical conditions, but
And then the other comment was related to like what is included in each. Do you think we should expand on any of these descriptions? Was there anything to clarify on any of
That
those?
came up was something about special needs, special education
Education.
programming. Where did we put that last night, or did we? Was that under
I think-
physical space, or was it under modernization? Where did?
I'd have to go back and look at the minutes, but I
For,
believe
for
the
addressing
answer was
like
kind of
special needs
both.
programs,
Yeah.
special ed,
Yeah.
that'd probably be, and Jeff or Vin can opine, but, more into the modernizing the schools instructional spaces. It's more associated with programming, but you do a renovation project, that's going to be in your ed spec, and that's going to address all the programming you need.
Because all of the ADA compliant part of that would be under the physical condition anyway. So it's the programming needs that would be under the modernization.
Does sound good.
Yep.
And it addresses program needs under modernize.
Mhm.
Addresses special ed program needs or just all program needs?
Or program needs including special ed,
I like that.
to make sure that that is noted.
Yep.
Good.
The column that says benefits all Cheshire students, I'm not sure I love the wording of that, because if you look at where it says benefits all Cheshire students and then look below it and saying it's a rating of 5, a weight of 5, it just seems like we're minimizing how this is going to, student impact I think is better. Thank you. I'm
How
just gonna
about
stop
something
talking.
like the timeliness of the impact to the students, because that
Yeah.
goes, that goes to the sequence of how that is going to happen.
Yeah,
So is it timely to start with the elementary schools first and then go to Dodd? Or is it more timely to start with Dodd? Or is it more timely to start with the high school? I'm not sure that's the right word, but is it the sequence of how that's going to happen going to be, because all of them will benefit the students. So
And-
which scenario will benefit them, the most students?
right.
Okay.
And I think it's the majority of students is what we were getting at, is that we want to do something off the bat that impacts the most students and not
Sorry,
impacts in a
all
bad
enter.
way. Not impacts in a bad way, but impacts in a good way. So
Right.
we want to hit the majority of people as quickly as we can. So that's, I think, what we're starting with here. And the reason we weighted it low is because we realize that once we get through all these projects, it will impact all students and we will get to that point. And that's why we weighted it low. But I just want to make sure people understand, like having that heading of benefits all students and then only giving it a 5 just makes it seem like we don't care. So I wanted to just clarify that and make sure everyone understood that that's what it was.
So do we want to expand on like the description of the factor at all, or do you think the description part of it is good if we just title it as student impact to students or student impact, one of the two?
I like Sylvia's terminology of the timeline. So maybe
The timeliness.
impacts students in a timely manner. I don't know, and something just to show that the reason we may weight one of them higher than another isn't because it doesn't impact all students, it's that it impacts more students faster.
The sequence of implementation, which results in student impact, the impact as student impact as related to the sequence of the project, maybe, something like that. I don't know. Not that-
It's
not-
getting to
Timeliness
the
of
most-
benefits to students.
Yeah, that's good. I'm okay with that.
I think that's a word, right?
Timeliness, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
Is that the word you're asking about? Yes, it is.
Good word.
Yeah. I don't know if that's how you spell it. I guess it just looks funny. It looks like
Chuck,
timelines.
you've been using matriculate in most meetings.
I've heard it twice.
It's because I heard that word and I wanted to sound smart too.
Get out the thesaurus.
All right.
That's
So
not an
global
engineering term we use, is
weights.
matriculate. That doesn't, they
Is that-
don't teach us that in engineering school.
Global weights of these then we're good on, correct?
I think so.
Yep.
The other comment was related to the scoring system of going 1 through 5. You know, I believe it was Kate said that the 1 through 5 system lends itself to 3 being a popular answer because you don't want to take a side
Neutral.
either way.
Yep.
Mhm.
One comment I had on that, and this might just be me, but going to 1 through 4, if we could make these a multiple of 4, you wouldn't end up with any sort of decimal score. So you wouldn't end up with a case where maybe you have a 79.5 versus 79.0. So if that were the case, this would be like, say, 32, 24, 20. This would have to be either 4 or 8, and then we'd adjust accordingly on the end here.
I
Or
don't
we
mind
just round the
decimals.
number, we could just change a decimal, significant digits up there at the top under the number, and you can just
Yep.
have them rounded.
In the formula.
Yeah, you're only ever going to end up with like a 0.5, but
Yeah.
like I said,
I-
that's just
I
me.
don't mind having a decimal. I think it makes us look more accurate. We rated this as a 79.5.
Yeah, as opposed to 79.3.
Right. I do
I
agree with
got it
Kate
that
as far as the 1 through 4. My only concern though is if you have to pick a 1, 2, 3, or 4, there isn't one in the middle. And I know that's what her point was. But what if some of these options do have like a not applicable, or it doesn't really matter? We then have to choose either 2 or 3, which is like a negative or a positive. So I'm not sure if that will ever really happen. I haven't really gone through this whole matrix myself, but just want to throw that out there. I do like the whole general idea though of having to pick either a negative 1, 2 or a positive 3, 4.
Tiebreaker, yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I did too. I just, as I was looking at this a little bit more, I mean, the difference between a 3 and a 4 is very apparent, I guess, on these higher weighted. It's a 7.5 point swing on a 30-point weight. So I wasn't crazy about that, but I mean, again, I could be wrong in there. It was really only 6 if you did it on a 5. So
Yeah, it's a good thing.
When we get these results back, we'll have
Maybe.
to look and see if anyone rates them as a 2.5.
yes. So, I mean, we should put in their whole numbers only.
Yeah.
Should we lock the spreadsheet so nobody can change it?
Yeah, I was actually going to tell John to do that before we send out the final, but that's definitely the thing. I mean, we're just going to you're only going to be able to change the yellow
Yellow and-
cells. So
Yeah.
Enter for the rank.
And are we giving them a drop dead date to have it completed and sent back?
Yes. Wholeheartedly,
Yes.
yes. We need a date
Absolutely.
for sure. What is that
So,
date?
well, first let's talk to John. As far as the spreadsheets, checking what we have here, and kind of finalizing the matrix. What is the time frame for you to do that? You need like a day to do that, or?
I can have it, addressed over the weekend and, get it out to you Sunday night or Monday morning or, so it can be looked at Monday morning.
Yeah, let's take a look at it again, maybe Monday, just make sure we got everything covered, and then we could send it
Okay.
out then with a drop dead date of submitting it by the following Monday, Jen. That'll give us a week to
It's also
incorporate it
over
before our meeting.
It's also over Christmas, so
Yeah, that's why you get a week. Christmas
That's
is
3
one of those
days
days, right?
before Christmas and
do we want to ask people to have it done to us in like 2 or 3 days, and that way we're done with it before Christmas? Or do you want to give people the weekend after Christmas to work on it too?
Realistically, I don't think we would do anything with the data until the following week anyway. So if we give them to the following
Okay.
Monday, which would be the
Yeah, I would think
28th or something.
How about we say Sunday night so
Yeah.
that we can do something with it on Monday?
Nice.
27th.
So John, you'll take a look at it over the weekend. We'll talk Monday, get it out with all the supplemental information, and then there'll be to that following Sunday night, which would be the 27th, right?
Yes.
For
Correct.
everybody to complete it. And then, we could talk about what we want to do with the responses and I think ideally we don't want to just take, well, this was the average score of everybody. We want to look and kind of see where there was like what might be throwing off some of the weights. If there was, five 4s and then 3 1s, like that's something that we kind of want to know so we can kind of see where the differences are. But we'll talk about we could talk about that after.
Yeah, it's not going to be just as simple as averaging it. We want to take a look at the actual data and see what those outliers are and see if there's an issue we need to
Exactly.
address.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe like a graph or something of each category and kind of see where the group kind of lied in there. So,
Laws. Yeah.
yep. All right. Did we have anything else to discuss, Andrew? Are you all set? Kind
I'm
of
good.
direction?
I'm good. I think this is great.
I do too.
Awesome.
I'm comfortable
Sylvia,
with
you're good?
Yep, I'm good. Now, are we having another meeting before January during that week of December? Did we pick another day to discuss the results of it? Are we just bringing those directly to the committee?
Well, what's our next committee meeting, Jen? Is that the 4th?
January 4th.
Yeah, so I think the meeting of this group would fall on the week of the 27th there if we wanted to say that Wednesday, but that's the 30th. Is that right?
That's the 30th. I think that's a good idea because then we'll have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to review the data and then present something in the options committee on the
Yep.
30th and
Think a
review
lot
it.
on New Year's Eve, right?
Yeah, I'll be out from the 30th to the 4th. I should be back for the 4th that evening
Okay.
for the meeting. I'll just be,
John can handle
Connor,
it.
you're available?
I'll take
Yeah.
care of it.
Yes, I am.
Nice. Excellent.
That
So we'll
works.
tentatively schedule one for the 30th, same time, same place.
4 o'clock or 3:30?
4 o'clock?
I'll be happy to
4 o'clock
call
works.
in from Key West if you want me to.
Oh.
Oh,
I don't want to even see the pictures from there. No, thank
Rub
you.
it in.
I'll just be in the
Margarita,
TV hut.
that won't be good, right?
You don't want to talk CIPs versus Renos from Key West? Come on.
Very good. So if there's nothing else, I think we just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, second.
Andrew, second by